Hey guys, tonight we ride with the wind straight into the dust-veiled sunrise over the Gobi Desert, where your boots are stiff, your horse smells like yesterday's fire, and your breakfast. Well, it's basically a wad of goat fat tucked into a leather pouch that's seen better centuries. You're a Mongol messenger now. No palace silk, no embroidered robes. You wear thick layers of felt that make you smell like smoked wool and disappointment. The saddle chafes. The air is thin and so dry it might actually age your teeth. But it's not the harsh terrain that's the biggest challenge, it's what you're expected to eat while galloping across 200 kilometers a day. Spoiler, there will be no pancakes. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're joining us from somewhere interesting tonight, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's drifting off from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't have a map, just instincts, horizon lines, and an occasional skull marking a turn. The sun's not quite risen, and you're already chewing. The snack of Champion's goat fat wrapped in a sliver of dried horse tendon. It's cold, waxy, and vaguely like licking a lantern wick. But energy is energy, and that fat will keep you moving longer than any boiled rice could. Mongol couriers weren't just delivering messages. They were the arteries of an empire stretching from Hungary to Korea. You're part of something bigger than yourself, even if your breakfast makes you feel smaller. You tighten your sash, securing a pouch filled with borsuk fried dough bits that have long since turned into edible pebbles, and ride out across the open steppe. There's no time for a fire, no time for tea. You chew and ride, chew and ride. Mainstream historians agree that these mounted couriers, part of the yam system, were the most efficient pre-modern postal workers in history. Think Amazon Prime, but with hooves and goat milk. They could ride up to 200 miles a day thanks to fresh horses stationed every 25-40 miles at relay camps or ordu. But the price of speed, culinary boredom, and some intestinal acrobatics. The Mongols prized function over flavor. You dip a finger into your second pouch. Our rule, sun-dried curds. Imagine sour chalk that squeaks when you chew it. It takes half your moisture just to break it down. No sauce. No apology. This cheese made from fermented milk and dried until it could survive an apocalypse was a staple. It was often made from mare's milk, yes, as in female horse. And if you think dairy makes you sleepy, congratulations, you're in for a nap. But here's the thing, you're grateful, because goat stomach lining, that's for dinner. As you crest a low ridge, you pass a cluster of camel bones, ancient markers used for direction. The wind whistles a tune through the ribs. You hum along mostly to keep your mind off what's rattling in your stomach. A gentle joke among modern reenactors is that Mongol rations could outlive the rider. Not totally wrong. There are documented accounts of Kurds surviving 2 winters strapped to a horse and still being, well, technically edible. Now let's take a moment to admire the pouch hanging from your saddle. Inside, a fermented milk skin. It sloshes. It stinks. It's arag, fermented mare's milk. You take a sip and immediately question your choices. It's sour, fizzy, mildly alcoholic, and slightly warm from your body heat. Historians still argue whether arag was truly energizing or just a placebo that numbed the misery of hard travel. Either way you swallow, that's breakfast. It'll be breakfast again tomorrow, and probably every day until your kidneys mutiny. Suddenly your horse shudders and slows. Ahead, you spot a lone jur, a round tent home to a local herder who may or may not be a yam courier sympathizer. He waves you over holding something in his hand. It's a strip of meat, possibly goat, possibly not. It's been sun-dried and smoked with dung fire. You take it. You don't ask. Chewing takes 5 minutes. Swallowing takes bravery. The man chuckles as you bite down. Mongol chewing gum, he says. You nod politely. Your jaw may file for divorce tomorrow. Still, you tuck another strip into your sash. Because out here, every calorie is borrowed. You don't eat because you're hungry. You eat so your hands don't shake holding the reins. And speaking of reins, you reach down and feel the tension on your horse's back. You murmur to it, not affectionately, but practically. You share a fate. Your stomach rumbles in solidarity with its hooves. At dusk, you finally see smoke. A relay camp. There's a fire, though no promise of comfort. You ride in and dismount stiffly. A young boy hands you a shallow bowl of broth. It's more water than meat, but it's warm. You nod your thanks and slurp without grace. The smell is mostly mutton, the flavor memories of salt. You're handed a handful of Sagan ID, or white foods curds, yogurt, dry cheese. Dairy was sacred symbolic and repetitive. Mongol cuisine wasn't about indulgence, it was about surviving another ride. There's a place at the fire, and for once you sit, your joints pop like tinder. A gray-bearded courier next to you offers a sip from his skin. It smells like smoked horse and vinegar. You drink. It numbs your lips. Success. He leans in. They say one guy once rode from Karakoram to the Caspian in 5 days. You blink. How? Drank the blood of his horse. You pause. Really? Historians still argue whether that tale is literal mythic or symbolic, but there are records of messengers nicking a vein in their horse's neck and drinking the blood to survive extreme hunger. Not common, not ideal, but possible. You look at your mount. It snorts. You decide to ration your curds more carefully. As night falls, you lie by the fire, a tangle of leather and wool. The stars above spin slowly like the inside of an unwashed helmet. Your breath mingles with the steam from a cracked bowl of salty porridge. You're not full. You're not hungry. You simply are. That's life on the steppe. Goat guts and grit. No menus, no complaints. Tomorrow, more riding, more chewing, less hoping. Sleep now. You'll need it. By morning, your jaw still aches from last night's dried curd, and your legs feel like they've been fused to the saddle. You've slept in the dirt, wrapped in a coarse blanket that smells like 12 other men before you, and possibly their goats. The fire died out sometime in the night, and the cold has a way of waking your bones before your brain. But there's no time to stretch or complain. You're already expected to be 20 miles away by sunup. So you pack up your things, mainly your curds, your pouch of fermented milk, and a small packet of dried blood sausage, and swing back into the saddle. Breakfast. Let's talk about it. Because Mongol messengers didn't start their day with eggs or toast. They started with arag again. Or if they were lucky, a bit of blood sausage made from whatever beast had most recently volunteered for empire building. Fermented mare's milk may sound exotic to you now, but for Mongol riders, it was the lifeline. High in fat, mildly alcoholic, and full of energy, it was both beverage and breakfast. You take another sour gulp, and it goes down with the warmth of a lukewarm apology. If you were traveling through the heart of the steppe, you might have access to other staples like bortsog, a kind of fried dough that's not quite a donut and not quite edible unless soaked in something alcoholic. You chew one now. It's rock hard and tastes like ancient lard and regret. Still, the calorie density is impressive. A single handful could keep a man going for most of a day if he was lucky. If not, well, that's what the horse was for. Because yes, on rare and desperate occasions, the horse itself became lunch. Now, before you gasp and throw your blanket off in protest, let's clarify. Mongols love their horses. Deeply. Spiritually. But in extreme circumstances, when a messenger was lost, cut off from resupply, or forced to ride through a winter storm with no food, they would perform a carefully executed ritual. The horse's neck vein was pierced not to kill, but to drain a controlled amount of blood into a leather pouch. Mixed with fat salt and herbs, if available, this warm concoction was known to sustain a man for days. Not delicious, not pretty, but effective. Historians still debate whether this was standard procedure or a survival myth exaggerated over time. Some believe it was more common in the Western campaigns, where terrain and climate proved harsher. Others think it was more symbolic evidence of the horseman's absolute bond with his mount, his last resort in a world without granola bars. You try not to think about it as your horse snorts and flicks its ears. You stroke its neck. Not today, friend. You whisper. You both feel a little better. You gallop over a rolling slope where the grass grows low and brown. The wind smells like dust and iron. There's a tug in your stomach, not hunger exactly, but the kind of gnawing need that food can't fix. You reach for a pouch of karut, compressed yogurt balls that are so dry they might predate the empire. It's like sucking on a pebble coated in old socks. Still, you chew. You chew while riding. You chew while ducking low branches and navigating rocky trails. Because stopping isn't an option. The YAM network depends on relentless movement. Every moment counts. That's where the genius of relay camps came in. You're headed toward one now, and the thought of a bowl of broth and maybe a slab of fatty meat keeps your eyes scanning the horizon. At the next ordo, you hand off your message scroll to the relay officer. He gives you a quick glance and without a word offers you a bowl. It's greasy opaque and smells suspiciously like boiled hoof, but it's hot, and right now, that's enough. You slurp it slowly, careful not to burn your tongue. The broth coats your throat and makes you feel vaguely human again. You don't ask what's in it. You don't want to know. They also hand you a small piece of besh barmak, a dish normally reserved for special occasions, noodles meat, and a mild onion sauce. This is a rough version, no noodles, maybe not meat, and an onion you might have to imagine, but it's a welcome change from dairy death chews. As you eat, an older messenger sits beside you and unwraps a bundle from his sash. Inside are what look like strips of bark. You squint. He smiles. Dried horse lung, he says, offering you a piece. You politely decline. Good for stamina, he insists. Worst things in the world. You've already eaten most of them. You finish your meal and refill your pouch with warm, sour arag. You're starting to almost like it. Or maybe your taste buds have simply surrendered. You mount a fresh horse and ride again. On the road, the monotony of motion returns. You pass a herd of wild gazelle, a line of yurts in the distance, and a lone hawk circling above. The only change is in your stomach, which now bubbles like a cauldron of questionable decisions. You nibble on a piece of shalgam, a pickled root vegetable with all the appeal of wet rope, but it cuts the dairy fatigue just enough to keep you alert. Mongol cuisine wasn't complex, but it was smart. Salty, fatty, fermented, preserved, every bite served a purpose. The real surprise comes around dusk. You encounter a traveling merchant from Khwarizm camped by a stream. He offers you a trade, one strip of silk ribbon for a bowl of lamb stew. You hesitate. Silk is valuable. But stew, hot meaty stew. You trade. The stew is glorious. It has texture spice, something that might be garlic and tiny bits of carrot. You don't speak for 10 minutes. The merchant watches you eat like a man recovering from amnesia. When you finally finish, he offers a date. As in the fruit, it is the sweetest thing you've tasted in weeks. You close your eyes. Don't forget who fed you, he says, half smiling. You nod. You won't. That night, you sleep near the stream. Your stomach doesn't ache. Your legs are still sore, but they feel like yours again. The moon hangs low, the horses breathe in rhythm, and your pouch of arag sits forgotten by the fire. For the first time in days, you don't need it. You're galloping again before the mist has even lifted off the grass. The morning chill cuts through your felt layers, stinging your cheeks, but you're too focused on the horizon to mind. Somewhere ahead is another relay camp, and with it the promise of fresh supplies. Not a feast, not even close, but at least something warm, chewy, or vaguely chewable. Your breath is visible in the cold air. It mingles with the dust kicked up by your horse's hooves. And yes, your legs are still sore. Your back aches like you've been mistaken for a saddle yourself. And your inner thighs have now formed an intimate bond with raw leather. But at least today, you know there's a camp kitchen waiting. You arrive at midday, having crossed a rocky valley and passed 2 dead camels, one half buried in sand, and a pile of stacked stones marking a turn. As you dismount, a strong aroma hits you, smoke meat, and is that onions? You step into the ordo and immediately scan for the food table. There it is, a modest layout of suivan stir-fried noodles with mutton and carrots, plus a battered pot of hot, salty milk tea. You could weep. Now let's pause and set the record straight. Mongol messengers didn't always eat on the run. When they hit an ordo, there were moments, fleeting but real, where they got to sit, eat, and even complain about the chewing fatigue. This particular camp is managed by an old woman with wrists like tree bark and a ladle like a weapon. She slaps your hand away when you reach for seconds before the elder couriers have eaten. Rank matters even in starvation. You eventually sit down with a battered bowl of noodles. The meat is stringy, but the fat coats your lips like hope. Carrots, rare as gold on the steppe, provide a crunch that almost qualifies as texture. You slurp loudly. No one judges. Someone passes a dish of bortsog, the rock-hard fried dough, and you dunk it in your tea to soften it. It sort of works. Mostly it becomes a greasy sponge with an identity crisis. Across from you, a courier named Timur tears open a leather pouch and offers you something gray and stiff. Yak jerky, he says. You take it, chew thoughtfully, and note that it tastes like salted saddle, but it's protein, and you're grateful. Gratitude is a muscle out here exercised often and without ceremony. After the meal, you sit under a makeshift awning with several other messengers. One of them, a wiry man from the east, pulls out a clay pot sealed with beeswax. The group murmurs. He breaks the seal and reveals Mare's milk butter, smooth white rare. He slices it with a dagger and spreads it on a piece of dried flatbread. You're handed a bite. It melts in your mouth like a long-lost dream. The saltiness is perfect, the fat a balm. That's from Karakoram, he says. It tastes like something a Khan might hoard. Historians still argue whether Mongol messengers had any real culinary hierarchy or if food distribution at ordu camps was strictly utilitarian. Some records suggest elite couriers were better fed, others imply it was all equally dismal. This butter feels like a treat, no matter what the truth is. Now comes the part of the afternoon that's both blessing and curse rest time. You lie on a coarse mat under the awning stomach, full wind whistling softly outside. The horses whinny in the distance. For the first time in days, you consider loosening your belt. You do. It feels wrong. It feels incredible. Sleep pulls at your eyes like a soft command. But just before you drift off, a handler taps your boot. Rider from the east, he mutters. Needs escort. Of course he does. You haul yourself up and see the newcomer. He's pale, thin, and clearly newer to the road than anyone here. He looks like he's never tried fermented yogurt. Poor thing. You grunt and gather your saddle. Another relay stretch begins. This one is long and dry. The air has lost its crispness. The sky blurs into a cloudless sheet. The trail is nothing but grass and silence. You pass time by chewing. Again. In your pouch, Tarag fermented yogurt, thick enough to coat a spoon and tart enough to startle your taste buds awake. You sip it from a gourd. It cools your throat and gives you something to do. The new courier tries it and gags. He recovers, then takes another sip. Not bad, he lies. By nightfall, you make camp by a windbreak of tall grasses. You share what you have: dried meat, old cheese, and a single wrinkled apricot pulled from the bottom of your kit. It is quite literally the highlight of the day. As you eat, the new courier tells a story. Once he begins, a rider got caught in a sandstorm and had to eat his own boot. You raise an eyebrow. Sliced it like dried hide, soaked it in broth for a day. Said it tasted like bitter gum. Historians still debate the accuracy of such tales. Some claim they were exaggerated to terrify new recruits. Others believe them entirely. After all, boiled leather isn't unheard of in survival accounts across empires. You gnaw on a piece of jerky and look at your own boots. They don't seem too offensive. Yet. The wind shifts. The fire crackles. You and the new rider lie back full in a deeply unsatisfying way. You whisper to the darkness. One day, someone will call this glamorous. The darkness whispers back in goat breath. You smile. That's the step for you. Big skies. Hard cheese. Long stories. By now, the rhythm of the road is etched into your bones. You wake before the sun, drink something sour, chew something tougher than tree bark, and ride until the sun threatens to crack the earth in half. And then you keep riding. You don't count the days anymore. You count meals by how many teeth you almost lost chewing them. Today's joy begins with what some couriers optimistically call a saddle snack. A dense wad of dried meat, pounded flat-salted like a monk's language, and folded neatly into waxed cloth. It's less a delicacy and more a chew toy with a protein bonus. You bite. It resists. You bite again. It gives just enough to remind you it's not a rock. This is Bortz, the heart of Mongol endurance eating. Made by slicing meat, usually horse goat or beef, into thin strips and hanging it to dry in the open air, Bortz could last for months, sometimes years. You've met couriers who've eaten Bortz older than their horses. It's light, efficient, and about as flavorful as the inside of a saddlebag. But it's protein, and that's everything. Historians widely agree that Bortz was a central innovation in steppe travel. It could be powdered, rehydrated in hot water, or as you're doing now, just gnawed on until morale improved. Mongol messengers often ground it into dust and mixed it with hot tea to create a kind of meat latte. You briefly consider trying that. Then you remember what hot milk tea with meat powder actually tastes like. Instead, you chew and ride. The land begins to change again. The grass fades into gravel. The air smells of dust and cold metal. You're nearing the edges of the Gobi. The temperature drops sharply. You adjust your layers and reach into your pouch, not for food, but for Arki. Now, Arky is not food. It's fermented milk turned into a kind of low-grade vodka. Mongol couriers didn't drink heavily while riding, but in small doses, it offered warmth, confidence, and just enough distraction to make you forget your feet were going numb. You take a sip. It burns, but not unkindly. You ride on, and by noon, you reach another ordu. This one is smaller, no tents, just a half-buried yurt and a lean man with smoke-stained hands standing over a pot. He gestures silently, and you dismount. He hands you a bowl of something thick and greenish-brown. You recognize the scent bone broth thickened with barley and something less identifiable. You nod thanks. You slurp. It's not bad. It's not good. It's hot. Nearby, a younger courier is sharpening his knife on a rock and chewing slowly on something. You ask. Dried camel milk curds, he says. You blink. He offers one. You accept. It tastes like soap and gravel. You smile anyway. The two of you sit quietly, the fire popping between you, steam rising from your bowls. There's peace in this. Mongol messengers often traveled alone, but when paths crossed, meals became moments of fragile community, the shared suffering of cheese and cold. That evening, you saddle up again and keep going. You pass through a narrow canyon filled with jagged stones and scattered bones, some animal, some larger. You hum quietly to keep your mind occupied. That's when you remember the pouch of goat tallow balls you were given 2 days ago. They're still in your side bag, and they've partially melted into a lumpy, waxy mass. You pull one out and stare. Mongol couriers used these dense fat balls, sometimes mixed with flour or herbs as emergency rations. They're energy bombs. They're also awful. You pop one in your mouth and immediately regret it. It clings to your teeth like betrayal. You chew slowly, praying for no sudden bumps in the trail. Far ahead, a dust plume. Another courier. You catch up and he offers you a skin of something bitter and fizzy. Soured mare's whey, he explains. Better cold. You nod and take a sip. It's not better cold. It's simply cold and awful. But your stomach accepts it like an old friend. Got any salt balls, he asks. You do. You hand him one round hard and suspiciously shiny. Mongols used to carry these balls of pressed salt and flour to replenish minerals lost from constant riding and sweating. They weren't tasty. They were necessary. He thanks you and pops it in like a candy. Chews, winces. Still better than boiled horsehide, he says. Historians still argue whether salt balls were a standard part of every courier's kit or reserved for military riders. Some archaeological finds suggest wide use. Others think they were regional. Either way, you're glad you had one to share. You ride together through twilight, sharing complaints, trading bits of hard cheese, and pointing out campsites long abandoned. The sky turns pink, then purple. The stars begin their slow march. You camp on high ground that night, under a canopy of wind and cold. You build a tiny fire, boil water in a dented iron cup, and stir in a pinch of powdered borts. The meat tea is salty warm and slightly terrifying. You drink it all. You take out your last pouch of fermented millet mush. It's lumpy and smells of old socks. You eat it anyway. Hunger is democratic on the steppe. And then you sleep, curled in wool belly, full of strange textures, head full of open sky. Tomorrow more saddle, more chewing, maybe even something fresh. But tonight you've survived. And on this road, that's enough. Your dreams are strange half-gallop, half-goat, and when you wake, there's dew crusted on your boots and a taste in your mouth like curdled memories. The fire has long gone cold. Your fellow courier has already saddled up and left, leaving behind only a few hoofprints and an empty flask that still smells faintly of Arky. You sigh and reach for breakfast. It's another helping of arul, the dried curds that could double as currency, or a surprisingly effective bludgeoning tool. Your teeth protest as you bite down, and somewhere in your skull, a memory of bread flickers and dies. Today's journey is longer than usual. The next relay station isn't until well past sundown. You ride with a stomach full of sour chalk and an afternoon wind in your face that smells like wet sheep and sand. Ahead of you is a stretch of territory known for its lack of vegetation, hospitality, and mercy, which means snacking on the move. You reach down, dig into your supply pouch, and pull out what might generously be called a chew bundle, a packet of mixed hard cheese sinew strips, dried berries, and a surprise crunch that you really hope is not beetle. You chew slowly, your body grateful for calories, even if your soul yearns for anything soft. One of the unsung talents of Mongol messengers was the ability to eat without dismounting. The saddle was home, the pouch the pantry. You cradle the reins in one hand, balance food in the other, and ride with the sway of the steppe. It's part choreography, part survival. Sometimes you'd get lucky and catch sight of a kulan, a wild ass, or a herd of marmots scurrying near burrows. If you were traveling with others and had time, you might attempt a marmot bake a dish that involves stuffing the animal with hot stones and sealing it in its own skin to cook. Mongols considered it a treat. You've never had one. You'd settle for undercooked turnips. Instead, you chew on sun-dried camel sausage, its casing shriveled like regret, and just as persistent. It smells faintly of dust and victory. Historians still argue whether Mongol messengers carried standardized food pouches or packed whatever was on hand. Some believe there were issued rations at major relay hubs. Others argue messengers relied heavily on local offerings and sheer intestinal resilience. Whatever the truth, your pouch is a patchwork of old cheese, hard meat, and food that might also be medicine or vice versa. You pass a flock of migrating cranes, the sound of their wings like sails on an empty sea. The rhythm of riding dulls the mind. The body operates on instinct. You drink water when the pouch allows it. You chew when your thoughts grow too loud. Mid-afternoon, you pause at a half-collapsed gur, abandoned by a herder long gone. Inside, you find a shallow dish of something that could be sute tsai, milk tea infused with salt and butter. It's cold. It's clotted. You drink it anyway. There's also a lump wrapped in cloth. You unwrap it slowly. Inside is a chunk of solidified blood pudding, likely goat pressed into shape and left to dry. You take a bite, and the iron tang fills your mouth like a blacksmith's handshake. It's oddly comforting. You pocket the rest. Evening settles slowly. The light turns gold, then brass, then fades into silver dusk. You spot smoke-thin hopeful spiraling into the cooling air, a tiny campfire near a rock outcrop. You ride closer. A boy tends the fire. Next to him, an older woman prepares food in a cracked ceramic pot. They nod to you as you dismount, and with the instinctual generosity of steppe culture, they offer you a bowl. It's gruel, barley, goat milk, and perhaps a single brave slice of onion. It tastes like warmth and something approaching joy. You finish it in 5 slow spoonfuls, then accept a hard-boiled egg with such reverence you might weep. You offer a strip of dried meat in return. The boy sniffs it and grins. Fair trade. They ask no questions. They don't ask your destination, your mission, or your rank. Out here, everyone's journey is assumed to be important and difficult. Before leaving, the old woman hands you something tightly wrapped in leaves. You thank her, tuck it away, and mount again. Later at your own fire, you unwrap it. Rice balls with sheep's fat, sticky and slightly smoked. A delicacy, really. You eat them slowly as if tasting a dream. That night, you write a few lines on a scrap of parchment you keep tucked in your boot. Nothing official, just your own thoughts. Today someone fed me, and I remembered I'm not alone. Sleep finds you quicker than usual, soothed by smoke starch and a stomach that for once doesn't groan in protest. You're awake before the sun again, though awake might be generous. Your body is vertical, your eyes are open, but a small part of your soul is still curled up beside last night's fire, clutching a sheep-fat rice ball in a dream it refuses to leave. No matter, you brush frost off your blanket, rub some life into your knees, and reach for the bundle of food you prepared last night. Inside a dried slab of borts, 2 hardened rice cakes, and the rest of that blood pudding chunk. It's not glamorous, but it's energy. You chew the borts. It takes time, concentration, and faith. You ride while you chew like always. The saddle groans beneath you, and your horse exhales dramatically, as if he too knows what kind of day it's going to be. Because today, you're crossing territorial borders, a section of the empire where the food changes slightly, even if the dust tastes the same. That's the thing about Mongol messengers, they weren't just traversing space. They were crossing culinary cultures, however subtle. As the terrain shifts, so does the flavor. At first, the difference is minor. The dairy gets lighter, less clotted, more tart. You find a pouch of Tarag fermented yogurt tastes a little smoother with fewer chewy surprises. Your first sip surprises you with a faint tang you can't quite place. It's citrusy, probably intentional. By midday, you're in Turkic territory, and the Ordu camp where you rest has new things on offer. You're handed a bowl of something warm and aromatic. It's Sherpa, a meat soup thinner than stew, but rich with onions and herbs. You sip it slowly, reverently. It's spiced. It has flavor. This is the kind of dish that makes your gums remember what happiness felt like. The man who served it offers a small clay pot. Try the vinegar dip, he says. You blink. Dip vinegar. You oblige. One of your rice cakes goes in. The taste is bright, acidic, unforgettable. For a second, you consider staying here forever, changing your name, marrying the soup. Historians still argue whether Mongol postal riders were encouraged to adapt to local diets or instructed to stick to empire-issued staples. Given the diversity of cultures under Mongol control, it's likely that diet varied by region, less by instruction, and more by what's available and palatable. You don't complain. You dip another rice cake. Later that afternoon, you stop to rest near a lone tamarisk tree and break into your own stash of preserved apricots. Dried fruit is a rarity out here, but you've traded well and hoarded smarter. The fruit is leathery sticky and so sweet, your tongue practically bows. Your horse eyes you jealously. You offer him a leftover cheese curd. He's unimpressed. You ride on. As the day wears on, you begin to notice more than just flavor shifts. The way meals are shared changes too. Where Mongol camps emphasize utilitarian speed, eat, ride, repeat these outposts linger a little longer around food. There's more conversation, slower chewing, even something like ritual. You sit with two riders near a low fire, each sipping boiled wheat tea from flat bowls. It's nutty and soothing, thick enough to coat your tongue. You dunk a strip of flatbread into it and let your jaw rest. That's when someone offers dried yogurt tablets the size of coins, chalky melt in your mouth, eventually, and surprisingly satisfying. You pop one in and let it dissolve like a secret. Best part of the road, one rider says, is when your pouch has choices. You nod. At this point, you do things for a pickled cucumber that aren't fit to say in polite company. You trade stories, share last bites, and mount again. The landscape begins to open flat plains bordered by distant hills, the sky stretched wide like a wool-dyed canopy. The grass here smells different, fresher somehow, and with the change in flora comes a subtle change in your food. The cheese curds from this area are flavored with wild herbs, mint sometimes thyme. You bite into one and stop startled. It tastes good. You eat the whole thing without regret, but as the sun sets, the comfort ends. You're alone again, navigating by starlight wind, and the hope that the next camp isn't just legend. Your stomach murmurs. You reach into your bag and find very little. One last emergency item, a compressed fat pellet mixed with flour and berries. It's dense, slightly fruity, and crumbly like cold wax. It sticks to your teeth and refuses to leave, but it keeps you moving. Somewhere out here, a writer once said, if it can't be eaten while riding with one hand, it's not worth packing. You understand that now. As you push forward into moonlight, you remember something else. This is the life you signed up for. The quiet roads, the odd food, the silence between hoofbeats, the stretch of landscape where your food doesn't just keep you alive, it marks where you are. And tonight, you are nowhere and everywhere at once. You settle beside a dry stream bed. No fire, just cold bread and a pouch of salty milk. You chew slowly. The flavors are muted now, but still present. A whisper of mint, a flicker of vinegar, a sweetness that might be real. Tomorrow, new lands, new pouches, possibly an onion. You close your eyes and let the taste of distance linger on your tongue. The morning comes like it always does, slow cold, and with the gentle slap of wind on your face, reminding you that the pillow you dreamed of was actually a folded saddlebag. You sit up, stretch out a back that sounds like old wood snapping in winter, and glance at your food pouch. It's lighter than it should be. Again. You rummage through what's left. A cracked ball of arul, one strip of jerky so stiff it might qualify as weaponry, and blessedly a small cloth bundle tied tight. You untie it. Inside is something new, Tangarian cool sky food they call it. Not because it fell from above, but because it's eaten on the highest, loneliest stretches of the steppe, it's a mix of dried fat powdered curd and ground barley flour, bland dense, and meant to be swallowed with air egg, or failing that warm water. You chew a bit and feel your body recognize it like an old friend who always shows up when you've run out of luck. You mount and ride again, your path a blur of golden grass, wind-sculpted rocks, and a sky so wide it makes your thoughts scatter. By midday, the land flattens further, and you spot another figure ahead, another courier, hunched low in the saddle, singing softly. It's an eerie, hollow kind of chant that seems to rise from the ground more than from his throat. He slows as you approach. Hungry, he asks. You nod. He reaches into a pouch and tosses you a hard ball of salted milk skin, sun-dried and flecked with crushed herbs. It's the size of a marble and tastes like leather, rubbed on a meadow. Still, it's nourishment. You offer him a wedge of pressed barley cake in return. It's crumbly, almost floury, and sticks to his lips as he chews. He smiles like he's just been served lamb by the Khan himself. I sing, he says, to keep hunger behind me, and it's true. On these endless roads, Mongol messengers developed ways to dull the ache of emptiness. Songs, chants, whispered prayers, many passed down from older riders, others made up during hour 17 on the saddle. Even the most hardened couriers had lullabies meant to calm the belly. Historians still argue whether this kind of vocal distraction had spiritual roots or purely practical ones. Was it mindfulness before mindfulness had a name? Or just a tired man humming to keep from eating his gloves? You continue together, the road narrowing to a dirt path framed by low hills. You chew as you go. You chew to pass time. You chew to delay thinking about your knees. You pause together that night, beneath a crooked tree bent by the wind. A makeshift fire is lit, and your companion pulls out something unusual. Fermented garlic root, he says, offering a bite. You accept. It's soft, a little sweet, and your tongue reacts like it's just tasted magic. He laughs. Found it near a herder's camp. They dig it in spring, ferment it underground. You trade him your last slice of dried plum. Fair's fair. Dinner tonight is a strange delight. Between the two of you, there's a stew made from boiled wild onions, leftover salted meat, and bits of dried mushroom gathered near a river bend 3 days back. You steep it all in a dented pot with water filtered through a wool cap. It tastes like hope and old boots. You love it. He pulls out a flask and raises it. To food that surprises, he says. You clink with your cup, and teeth that endure. There's laughter, the kind that echoes a little, the kind that only comes from riders who've seen too much cheese and not enough bread. As the fire dies, he begins to sing again, a low rhythmic chant that speaks of horses' stars and bowls that never empty. You listen with your eyes closed. There's comfort in this, the shared silence after a song, the last chew before sleep. Your belly isn't full, but it's satisfied. Your mind isn't racing, but it's moving, just enough to dream. And tomorrow, new lands again, new tastes, new pouches filled by strangers whose names you'll never learn, but whose food you'll remember longer than their faces. For now, the wind rocks the grass, the stars hum their soft chorus. And you courier of empires sleep with the taste of garlic root and good company still fresh on your tongue. You wake to your companion already gone, leaving behind only hoofprints and a still warm spot in the grass. The fire has dwindled to a faint pile of ash, and your first thought is not of destiny or empire, but of breakfast. You pat your pouch and pull out a sun-warmed hunk of barley mush, molded into a tight, grainy cube. It's dense, slightly crumbly, and utterly flavorless, unless, of course, you count the faint aftertaste of the wool it was wrapped in. You chew slowly with the resigned air of a man who's memorized every crack in the inside of his own mouth. Your horse waits already saddled. You mount and ride the rhythm as automatic as breathing. The sun is behind your back, your shadow long and twitching across the plains like a banner for no one. There's no relay camp scheduled today, just you, the road, and what your saddle pouches still hold, which isn't much. You reach down for your emergency bundle, a tightly wrapped roll of cloth containing the last of your fat and dried meatball, a few slivers of sour cheese, and a pouch of fermented millet water that now tastes suspiciously like forgotten socks. Still, calories are calories. You take out the fat meatball. It's sticky, oily, leaves a shine on your fingers that no amount of wiping on your trousers removes. You break off a piece and chew. It softens slowly, releasing its strange warmth across your tongue. Some messengers swore by this stuff. Made properly, it could sustain a man for an entire day. The fat melted in your body and gave you energy without needing much digestion. The meat provided protein. And if you were lucky, it didn't taste like despair. As you ride, the wind picks up dry, insistent, filled with the whispers of sand and long dead whispers. You pass a pile of stones marking a border, probably tribal, possibly spiritual. You offer the last bite of your cheese to the earth, a quiet thank you to whoever once marked this place. By late afternoon, your stomach growls again. You remember the saddle packs tucked on the left side, flat cakes of dried pea mash that a herder gave you 3 days ago. You unwrap one. It's cracked at the edges, smells faintly of dirt and garlic, and feels like biting into dry moss. You swallow anyway. 2 bites, 3. Then something magical happens. You find a pouch of honeyed nuts you completely forgot about. A rare gift likely meant to be traded, but you're too hungry to care. You eat them with reverence, the sweetness so shocking it actually brings tears to your eyes. It's like chewing gold dust. You stop your horse just to enjoy it properly. Each nut is a memory, each smear of honey a song. For 5 minutes, you are a different man, one with something to savor. Historians still argue whether such delicacies were common or exceptional. Some suggest that high-ranking couriers received better rations or occasional treats as morale boosters. Others believe these snacks were purely personal, bartered or gifted from sympathetic locals. Either way, you've hit the jackpot. You ride on with new energy. The horizon expands again. The land turns yellow-gray, littered with pebbles and ghost grasses. You hum an old tune about milk that sings in the gut, a superstition from the north. By nightfall, you spot smoke again, barely a thread, but enough. You approach a herder's camp, welcomed with nods and the quiet efficiency of a people who always have just enough to share, and never more. They serve you milky porridge made from goat milk and coarse grains. You slurp it down, careful not to spill a drop. The herder's wife smiles and hands you a small bowl of pickled radish, sharp salty, and unexpectedly cooling. Your tongue rejoices. Then comes the real treasure. From a small clay pot, she spoons out preserved mutton fat, smooth, translucent, the color of old ivory. She spreads it over flat bread like butter. You eat it slowly, your entire body relaxing. You've never been so grateful for fat. After dinner, the herder sits with you beside the fire and shares a story about a courier who once survived 10 days in the snow with only a flask of dried blood pudding and a single strip of hide from his horse's bridle. He boiled it 3 times, the herder says, chuckling, and each time it told a different story. You both laugh, even though part of you wonders just how true that might have been. You ask for water, and they offer birch-infused snowmelt cooled in a stone basin. It tastes like trees and forgotten rain. You've never had anything quite like it. That night, you sleep under a tent of stars, your stomach full, your tongue still coated in mutton fat, and your dreams filled with honeyed nuts dancing through open fields. You're on the move again, by dawn. The kind of dawn that looks more like night, wearing a dusty shirt. The herder's camp disappears behind you with a single wave, and you ride into the yawning quiet. The world is still. No birds, no fires, just you, your horse, and the soft squelch of fermented milk gurgling in your gut. You're headed toward the edge of grazing country now, into a region where grass thins and rocks multiply. It's a shift not only in scenery, but in what little food you can expect to find or barter. Out here, everything costs more energy effort, and especially anything edible. You tighten your belt a notch not out of hunger, but anticipation. This is a place where the horses eat first, and you eat what's left. In your saddlebag, you pull out a pouch of roasted barley flour, known to some riders as poor man's porridge. It's dry, powdery, and meant to be mixed with water, or in emergencies, chewed straight. Today is one of those emergencies. You tilt the pouch into your mouth like a gambler shaking dice. The powder hits your tongue and coats everything like beige regret. You try not to cough. A sip of sour mare's milk helps wash it down, though you immediately regret that too. This, dear listener, is sustenance, not pleasure. Your horse, meanwhile, stops suddenly and nudges a patch of low grass. You dismount, loosen the bridle, and let him graze. He chomps like royalty while you gnaw on a leftover strip of sheep cartilage, its chewiness somewhere between candle wax and dried rope. and yet you're grateful. Because on days like this, your horse matters more than you do. You kneel beside him, pull a small sack of barley grain from your pack, and pour it into your palm. He eats greedily, snorting softly. This was the logic of the step. A healthy mount meant a functioning messenger. You fed your horse, even if it meant skipping your own meal. The yam system depended on horses like others depended on wheels. Historians note that Mongol horses were incredibly hardy, able to graze on minimal pasture, drink less water, and ride for days. But when under the strain of courier work, even they needed help. Messengers sometimes bartered their own supplies, cheese, fabric, tools for oats or millet to keep their animals going. You finish feeding him, then remount. Your stomach makes a hollow sound as if applauding your noble sacrifice. By midday, the sun is cruel and the wind no longer friendly. You ride low hunched and find yourself fantasizing not about lamb stew or sweet rice, but soft bread. Just the idea of something that doesn't fight your teeth brings tears. Instead, you dig out an emergency milk pellet, a rock-solid lump made from curd fat and salt. It's lasted this long because no one's ever wanted to eat it. Today, however, it gets its moment. You suck on it like a lozenge. It tastes like chalk and old promises. Around late afternoon, you spot a man on the horizon walking. You approach cautiously. He's thin, his robe flapping like tired flags. A lost trader, a fellow courier, hard to say. He smiles weakly and lifts a cracked clay cup. Water he rasps. You hand him a skin. He drinks, then offers a gift in return, pressed dates and goat cheese wrapped in palm bark. You stare. You accept. The date is sticky and sweet, its sugar shocking in your mouth. The cheese crumbles and melts into it like a love letter to your taste buds. From the south, he says, trade route. He nods, once then walks on, vanishing into the horizon like someone exiting a story. You ride slower now, letting the flavor linger. That single bite has revived you in a way 10 salted meats never could. By evening, you stop at a ruined ordu, half buried by time and sand. A collapsed tent, a fire pit still outlined in stones. You find a broken pot containing a grain paste dried gray, but unspoiled. You scrape some into your cup, mix it with hot water, and stir. It turns into something mushy, something edible, something nearly comforting. You eat in silence. The wind howls but carries no threat. You remember a story a veteran courier once told of a rider who packed his saddle with oats and sat on them for hours to warm them. When hunger struck, he'd scoop out a handful softened by his own body heat and eat it like stew. You smile. You understand now. You set out your bedroll and tuck yourself in. One last snack, a folded bit of dried apple peel. Not much, but sweet. You suck on it as the stars flicker to life. Hunger is a dull companion now. Familiar, predictable. The kind that taps you on the shoulder and says, still here but doesn't press. And tomorrow the road again. Maybe another ruined pot. Maybe a herder's kindness. Maybe just milk pellets and wind. But for now, you sleep with the taste of dates on your tongue and the silence of a fed horse beside you. Morning comes like a whispered apology. Gentle light on your eyelids, a breeze carrying the scent of dry grass and scorched stone, and the kind of aching hunger that feels less like pain and more like a low vibrating reminder you are still alive. And that comes with maintenance. You sit up slowly, rubbing the back of your neck, and look over your supplies. Slim pickings. There's a sliver of cheese that's gone dry enough to pass as chalk a ball of fat that's become more philosophical than edible. And a single strange pouch you forgot you had. You open it with hope. Inside something you'd once considered trading away pickled mare placenta. Yes, you read that correctly. Now, before your gag reflex sits up in protest, understand that in certain corners of the steppe, this delicacy was prized. Not common, certainly, but not unheard of either. Rich in nutrients, pickled for longevity, and consumed in small quantities like medicine or penance. You take a tentative bite. It's tangy, chewy, not quite meat, not quite mystery. You chew slowly, mostly to convince yourself it's not as weird as it sounds. Your stomach grumbles with interest or protest. Hard to say. You ride with the sun rising on your left and the wind constantly trying to unzip your cloak. The land around you begins to change again. Hills smooth out, distant mountains shrink, and the air carries the scent of dust and heat. You're approaching more southern terrain. That means one thing dumplings are on the horizon. Not today, not yet, but the promise of them lingers in your mind like a blessing. You ride past a line of stacked rocks marking the trail. A worn scarf is tied to one, a votive offering. You add a fragment of dried cheese as your own. Out here, even food becomes prayer. By mid-morning, you're hungry again. Your mouth is dry, your lips are cracking, and your last ball of arui crumbles in your hand like ancient parchment. That's when you spot smoke on the breeze. You follow it to a small camp, 3 yurts, a pair of goats, and a woman sitting on a stool churning something slowly, rhythmically, with a scowl that could curdle milk faster than the churn. You dismount, bow slightly, and offer a strip of dried meat. She accepts it with a grunt and gestures for you to sit. You do. Her son brings you a bowl of steamed dough dumplings, buzz soft and meaty, filled with fatty mutton and flecks of garlic. It's so warm, so savory, that you nearly forget who you are. You eat 3, slowly, reverently. She pours you milk tea, lightly salted, thick with goat butter, and tasting like a hug from someone who used to be angry at you, but forgave you because you washed the dishes. You almost cry. You trade one of your last saddle knives for a small cloth bundle of leftover dumplings. Worth it. You tuck them into your pouch like they're gold. Historians still debate whether Mongol messengers were permitted to deviate from official food supplies or accept hospitality from civilians. Some accounts suggest they were expected to stay focused, self-reliant, and moving. Others describe frequent informal interactions with locals where food and gossip were exchanged like currency. Your experience leans toward the latter. The empire moved on the generosity of strangers just as much as its own horses. As you prepare to leave, the woman offers one more item, a soft palm-sized bread cake lightly fried in animal fat and still warm. You clutch it with the kind of joy usually reserved for religious visions. You ride on full for the first time in what feels like weeks. Your horse senses it too. Your posture changes your movement's ease. You chew thoughtfully on one of the dumplings, savoring each bite as the landscape drifts past. Later, you stop beneath a lone tree and unwrap a square of pressed herb paste, a blend of wild thyme salt and crushed seeds. It's pungent, earthy, and tastes like biting into the memory of a forest. You sprinkle a bit onto your bread cake and smile like someone who just discovered seasoning. You reach another ruined outpost by dusk. It smells of ash and memory. You find a single cracked pot and use it to boil water. You mix in the last of your barley flour, a pinch of salt from a forgotten pocket, and a spoonful of dried milk powder. It becomes porridge. You eat it slowly. It is not good, but it is warm. The stars come out like punctuation across the sky. You sit with your bowl, breathing in the cool air, the smoke of a dying fire, and the ghost of garlic still lingering on your fingers. You think back on everything you've eaten. The hard cheese, the milk lozenges, the sinew strips, the garlic root, and the salted tea. And yes, even the pickled placenta. You're a moving museum of Mongol rations. You fall asleep still full, not just in the belly, but in the story. Tomorrow the road bends again. And if the gods are kind, maybe, just maybe, there'll be soup. The sun rises behind you like a slow breath through chapped lips. You're already riding. You're always already riding. The dumplings from yesterday are gone. 1 for breakfast, 2 for dreaming. And you miss them more than you've ever missed a person. You glance at your pouch now, holding only a small puck of cheese and a mystery wrapped in old cloth. You unwrap the mystery. It's meat soup concentrate, a congealed leathery mass of meat-fat marrow, and spices boiled down until it became something between a food and a survival tool. The smell is assertive. You're not sure if it's goat horse or experimental, but it's edible. Technically, you cut off a slice with your knife and hold it between your teeth like a nervous soldier. It softens as you ride, warming in your mouth until you can break it down enough to swallow. And with that, you begin your day. Out here, there's no wood for fire, no soft moss to rest your back, just stones and wind and bones half buried in the sand, most animals, some not. Your stomach churns as the soup mass hits it like a whisper of a meal wearing army boots. The gobi edges into your path again. The world flattens and turns the color of old canvas. Everything becomes louder, your breath, your thoughts, your saddle creaking like it has secrets to share. You hum, you chew, you mutter to your horse, and then like a prayer answered sideways, you find a cache. Half buried under a cairn of rocks sealed in a tight leather bag, you find what must have been stashed by another courier, maybe days ago, maybe weeks. Inside, dried curds, barley cakes, and a flask of something. You sniff it. Fermented sheep's milk. You drink it anyway. It's sour, but not angry. Tangy with a trace of wild herbs, possibly thyme. You drink deep. When your lips come away, they're sticky, and your mood is elevated by roughly 13%. You whisper a thank you to the wind, then add a stone to the cairn. Historians still argue whether hidden food caches were common practice among couriers. Some believe they were unofficial, but accepted a way for riders to support each other on long, empty stretches. Others think they were outlawed due to potential spoilage. Judging by the curd quality, this one was recent and clean. You pocket one of the barley cakes and ride on. By midday, you stop to rest in a shallow depression behind a boulder. You unwrap your remaining soup concentrate and mix a thin sliver of it with water from your skin. You shake it in a small cup until it resembles broth, or at least broth's tired cousin. You sip slowly, staring at the dust. That's when you hear a sound bells. A herd of sheep approaches, led by 2 young herders. They see you and approach cautiously. You nod. They nod. It's the language of riders. You offer a coin for a bowl of fresh sheep milk, and they give you something better, a pouch of clotted cream the size of your fist. It's rich, buttery smooth. You dip your barley cake in it. You chew with reverence. It coats your tongue in something warm and maternal. The older herder grins. Eat slow. Dream better. You thank him. He tosses you a dried fig where he got it, who knows? But you receive it like treasure. You save it for later. A dessert. A reward. You ride until dusk. You spot another courier in the distance, hunched and slow. You approach. His face is gaunt, his eyes sunken. He hasn't eaten well. You offer him some of the curd from the cache. He nods with a kind of exhausted gratitude that requires no words. He offers you in return salted camel tongue dried into a tight curl and threaded like beads. You try one. It's tender, salty, a little peppery, surprisingly pleasant. You nod. The 2 of you make camp together, building a tiny windbreak with rocks and broken twigs. There's no fire, but there's warmth in shared food. He pulls out his own supply, a jar of fermented wild onion paste, spicy and sharp, and spreads it over a slab of dried meat. You follow suit. The flavor is startling, bright. A punch in the mouth from nature herself. Got that in Kiva, he mutters. Still good. You share what's left of the clotted cream. He eats it with a look of religious awe. The night wraps around you like a blanket that forgot to be soft. The wind hums lullabies through the stones, and the sheep's milk clings to your teeth like a promise. You sleep belly warm and full for once. And in your dreams, the fig returns soft, sweet, impossible. Morning greets you with a breeze that smells like dry grass, and a subtle reminder from your stomach that the feast of clotted cream and camel tongue is now a memory filed under miracles. Your fellow courier is already gone, leaving behind the faint print of a boot, a curled piece of onion-scented twine, and a flattened patch where he slept with one hand on his food pouch. You stretch, yawn, and reach for breakfast. This morning, it's a piece of that cache curd, slightly softer now from days of travel against your side, and no more forgiving for it. You suck on it while saddling your horse, letting the salt and sourness pull your thoughts together. Your tongue has started to accept that flavor, now not enjoy it, just understand it. Today's ride is long and dry. The route takes you over flatlands where the only movement is wind-dragging shadows of clouds across the plain. Your supplies are running low again, but you've learned to treat scarcity as a companion. Reliable, predictable. You chew on a strip of sinew dried and twisted like some forgotten shoelace. It takes you an hour to get through. You ride the entire time using one hand to guide the reins and the other to manage your reluctant breakfast. Now and then you check your pouch, not out of hope, but routine. Still there, the fig. Untouched. Sacred. You ride on belly steady but unsatisfied. A half day passes in silence. Then near a cluster of rocks that might have once been part of an old watch post, you see something unusual. A herder's wagon. Bright cloth. Smoke. Music faintly from a reed flute. You approach carefully. It's a small caravan, and they wave you over. Hospitality on the steppe is a ritual. When it's offered, you accept. You dismount. A young man hands you a cup. You sniff. It's boiled fermented milk with cinnamon and salt. A new combination. You drink. Your eyes widen. It's good. They feed you a stew, lamb, onions, and dried fruit. The sweetness of raisins and the savory fat of meat blend together like a song you didn't know you remembered. You eat slowly, cheeks warm, heart fuller than your belly. Then they bring out something truly strange: cooked cheese. Not melted, not boiled, roasted on stones, then wrapped in herbs and pressed flat. It's smoky, chewy, and oddly luxurious. You trade a flintstone and a spare strap of leather for a second helping. As you prepare to leave, the eldest of the group offers you a sealed leather pouch. Open only when the sky turns, he says. You nod and tuck it into your bag. By late afternoon, the landscape changes again. Dust swirls. Sand creeps in. You've reached the edge of desert again. The wind cuts sharper, and your horse is starting to grow cautious. You find a shallow cave and rest. Now hunger grows again. Not urgent, but insistent. You reach for the pouch from the caravan. You open it. Inside, a thin flatbread wrapped around a dried apricot and slivered almonds tied with mint leaves. It smells like a memory you haven't made yet. You take a bite. It is perfect. Your eyes close. The bread is still soft, the fruit sweet and tart, the almonds crunchy and grounding. You eat it all. Historians still argue whether such food trades between nomads and messengers were regulated or informal. Some documents suggest courier diets were controlled to maintain speed. Others hint that a well-fed courier, no matter the source, was simply better for the empire. Either way, your steps are lighter now. Your horse senses it too. You ride through dusk. The fig is still untouched. Not yet. Not tonight. Instead, you chew the last of your meat and fat ration, now almost translucent from age and pressure. It tastes like every trail behind you, every hoof print you've left in soft earth, every mile between meals. As the stars appear, you whisper thanks. To the caravan, to the cheese, to the fig that waits, and to your stomach for not mutinying today. The wind has teeth this morning. You feel it nip at your cheeks and tug at the folds of your felt cloak as you ride through a pass littered with brittle grass and silence. There's no camp behind you, no smoke ahead, just rock and sky, and the faint sound of your horse chewing thoughtfully on nothing. It's one of those days where the hunger doesn't just murmur, it lectures loudly. You reach into your pouch and pull out a small piece of boiled saddle leather. Yes, really. It's not your first time and likely not your last. This isn't desperation. It's a method. Mongol messengers, when faced with days between camps and nothing left to eat, sometimes resorted to softening strips of leather in boiling water. The result was chewy, slightly salty, and technically digestible. If you were lucky, the leather had been treated with oil or blood-adding flavor. If you weren't well, you had a mouthful of boot soup. Today's strip moderately awful. You boil it briefly over a tiny flame and chew slowly, jaw aching, before you swallow the first bite. The flavor is best described as tired. Still, your body says thank you. Historians still argue whether boiled leather was a widespread courier practice or an exaggeration passed down through legend. But remains of gnawed leather straps in old yam station sites suggest that in times of need, necessity overruled dignity. And then, nothing. No food, no water, no human voice. The world narrows to hoofbeats and wind. You ride until the sky fades into copper. A cloud of birds erupts from the scrub and vanishes. You feel faint. Your fingers tremble. Your mouth tastes of dust and regret. You stop. You pull out the fig. You've carried it for so long now that it feels sacred. A soft orb of sugar and memory, its wrinkled skin, the only thing between you and total surrender. You unwrap it. You pause. You eat. The flavor is everything. Sweet, dark, deep. Your eyes close, and for a moment you are a child again, or a man at court, or someone who hasn't chewed dry fat for 6 days straight. You sit in silence for 5 minutes after letting the flavor linger in your breath and behind your teeth. That fig saved something in you, and then you mount again. Hours pass. The moon rises. You ride through a silence so deep it begins to sound like music. And just when you think your luck has thinned beyond repair, you see it. A yam station. Not a grand one, just a wind-blasted hut, a handful of stones stacked around a fire, and a boy stirring a pot of meat porridge that smells like roasted onions and courage. You dismount like a ghost hand over your dispatch and sit near the fire. You're handed a bowl without words. Inside, rice porridge thickened with goat tallow, scattered with chopped garlic chives, and miraculously a pinch of wild pepper. You take your first spoonful, you close your eyes, you breathe, and you keep eating. It's warm and filling. The rice sticks to your ribs. The fat glistens in little pools across the top. You dunk a piece of black bread in it, crusty, coarse, and glorious, and eat it like someone who remembers joy. Later, one of the older couriers offers you a dried fruit roll, plum leather, sticky and sharp. You thank him with a nod and save it for later. This one you'll carry for a while, maybe all the way to Karakoram. You lie down near the fire, full in every way that counts. Your belly, your heart, your hope. Your last thought before sleep is a quiet marveling at how hunger and fulfillment dance so closely out here. One meal, one fig, one bowl of porridge can rearrange your entire universe. And tonight, your universe feels kind again. You leave the yam station with your belly lined in rice and tallow your bones just a little more cooperative, and your soul carrying the quiet dignity of someone who's seen both extremes, leather soup and garlic chive, porridge hunger, and the warmth that follows it. The morning air is bright and deceptively soft, like the opening notes of a song you know will end in minor key. But you ride anyway. You always do. Today's stretch takes you into more familiar terrain roads, not easier, but roads you've seen before. This is the edge of the Empire's heartbeat, where word from the capital pulses outward like blood through veins. And you're the pulse, still galloping, still chewing. You glance at your pouch. Half a roll of plum leather remains. You tear off a strip and let it melt slowly on your tongue. It tastes of dried sweetness, sun-wrinkled patience, and the tiniest hint of sour joy. You tuck the rest away. Luxury doesn't need to be finished all at once. You're approaching the court city, not Karakoram exactly, but the outer belt of its administrative complex. You won't see golden halls or drink butter tea from golden bowls, but you might glimpse the roofs. And more importantly, you'll eat like someone matters. You pass merchants, guards, messengers of a different rank. Your horse is muddy, your cloak frayed, and your food-stained satchel hangs open like a loyal dog's mouth. But you ride tall, and then you're flagged down. A steward gestures for you to stop. He wears silk-lined robes and the knowing expression of someone who gets regular meals. You'll be wanted at the eastern tent, he says, after you've been fed. That's the first time in a long while someone has scheduled your eating. You're led to a side tent, a small station built for weary messengers returning from the outer reaches of the Empire. Inside is a table, an actual wooden table. There's steam. There's a bowl. You almost weep. The first course is braised root stew, thick with potatoes, garlic, and a slice of lamb so tender you could chew it with a memory. You do. You nearly moan. Then comes steamed flatbread, brushed with melted fat and sprinkled with toasted millet. You break it apart slowly, every tear releasing warmth into your fingers and peace into your chest. They hand you a cup of black fermented tea, not sour, not sweet, just warm and grounding. You drink with both hands. You are reborn. Then, in an act of culinary grace, a platter is set down beside you. On it, roast goose spiced with coriander and stuffed with barley and wild plums. You are a messenger. You are exhausted. You smell like travel and shame. And yet you are fed like a prince. You eat slowly, reverently. Your fingers gleam with goose fat. You lick each one. No one rushes you. Historians sometimes overlook the hospitality shown to messengers arriving from long stretches. But anecdotal letters from scribes and nobles suggest these meals weren't just indulgence, they were ceremony. The feeding of a courier was the empire feeding itself. You're handed one final item, a delicate parcel wrapped in silk. Inside is a sweet rice cake, soft and scented with rosewater. You don't eat it, not yet. You wrap it again and tuck it deep into your pouch. There will be another journey. When you leave, you carry no scroll, just a gesture of the steward's hand and a nod that says more is coming. Always more. You ride out of the administrative ring with the weight of full meals and clean water slowing your pulse. Your thoughts drift to the time you boiled leather, to the boy who gave you camel tongue, to the fig, to the sour milk, the salted fat, the fried bread at that dusty relay, and eventually to the Khans themselves. Because while you eat dumplings in the dirt, they dine beneath silk with porcelain dishes and servers who never ride. At least, that's the story. But tonight, you stop near a camp where a group of court cooks is training younger apprentices. They're loud, messy, and too distracted to notice you. You listen as one of them drops a tray of pigeon pies and curses like a stable hand. You catch a scent-spiced pastry, roasted grain, hot butter. They do notice you eventually. One grins. You look hungry. You nod. Always. They toss you a pie. It's small, golden, stuffed with dried berries and pigeon thigh, and it burns your hands with goodness. You eat the whole thing sitting in the dark, watching their firelight from a distance. The Khans might eat better, fancier, more often. But tonight, you eat the same pie as their cooks. And in that bite, flaky and hot and bright with wild fruit, you taste something like equality. You leave before dawn, clutching the parcel from the court tent deep inside your cloak like a treasure. The sweet rice cake rests against your ribs, soft and perfumed with rose water. You haven't touched it. You won't, not yet. Some things aren't for now. Some are meant to be reminders that the world holds sweetness, even when your teeth hurt from old curd. The trail ahead loops eastward now along a riverbed traced in willows and cracked ice. You ride slowly. There's no rush this time, no urgent dispatch, no screaming warlord miles away demanding your arrival. Just the road. And hunger always in the background. Not sharp now, just present, like an echo of the person you've been for weeks. You chew a dried piece of spiced goose skin from last night's feast, pulling on the edge of salt and smoke. It holds you for a while. You stop by the river to let your horse drink, and while he laps, you finally open the fig roll you saved from the other courier days ago. It's flattened now, but still pliable, still sweet. You take a bite and laugh quietly. It's amazing how something so small, so insignificant in size can taste like forgiveness. The terrain shifts. The air grows warmer. You pass into farmland fields recently harvested, the scent of charred husks and hay clinging to the breeze. In the distance, smoke, cook fires, maybe even baking bread. You don't approach. You ride through unnoticed. That's the job. Ghost between worlds. Always moving. Always chewing. At a hilltop shrine, you stop. You unwrap the rice cake. It's perfect. Still soft. Fragrant. You eat it slowly, bite by bite. Each mouthful folds the days behind you into something smaller, quieter, less painful. You close your eyes with the last bite and let it dissolve like memory. And now, you slow. Your horse, too, eases into a gentle walk, his hooves quiet on the softened path, his breath a steady rhythm beside yours. The road behind you stretches far, a string of silent meals, cracked cheese, unexpected kindnesses, and evenings when the fire wouldn't light. But that's behind you now, fading, dissolving. Your belly, no longer growling, rests with the memory of warm porridge and sticky fruit. Your tongue still carries the faintest echo of honeyed nuts and wild onion paste. Your hands remember the way a fresh dumpling curled into your palm, like something sacred. And ahead, just fields, the shimmer of heat. Maybe another town, maybe another meal, but not tonight. Tonight, you dismount, slowly letting your feet settle into the soft dust. You find a patch of grass just dry enough to lie on. You pull your cloak around your shoulders, let your body curl slightly, and tuck one hand beneath your cheek, like a child. The wind rustles nearby trees, soft, gentle like breath, like someone humming a lullaby just out of reach. And above you stars, familiar, patient, silent companions to the weary and the fed alike. You exhale, deep, long. Let your thoughts drift now. Let the saddle sores fade. Let the cheese harden quietly in your bag while you don't need it. You've ridden far. You've eaten stranger things than you care to name. You've survived the silence between meals and the songs sung to keep hunger at bay. Now sleep. Sleep in the full knowledge that you've walked the belly of an empire, and it has not chewed you up. Not tonight.